Okay, dirty frying pan. I'll explain that in a second. A whole bunch of pork. It's Easter. You've seen my videos about the pork roast we made. Leftover pork all cut up. I don't know, what's that, a pound and a half maybe, so 750 grams. Going to make calzones, real simple calzones. Got some fresh onions. I've been rendering some of the pork fat in the pan here, so there's pork fat. And this is actually called scrunchions. I think I have a video on scrunchions. It's basically all the little solid bits that are left over when you're rendering pork fat. I'm going to leave those in there because they're really yummy. I eat those just like that. We're going to get our onions in there. And I'm going to show you how to make some really simple calzones that'll just be a favorite for everybody in your family like they are in mine. So we're just going to brown up the onions some. Then I'm going to throw in the pork. That's fresh ground rosemary that's going in later. Some salt. We'll show you how it goes. Alright, they are starting to brown up nicely there. It'll only be another couple of minutes and I will be adding all that pork in there. I could have browned it longer. I just added the pork in. This pork is fairly fatty, otherwise I would actually normally be adding some fat into this, a little bit of oil of some kind. So the pork is going to produce quite a bit of its own fat for frying up here. So we're just going to toss in some salt. That's about a teaspoon of salt going in there. Once we get adding a sauce in here, which is going to come very shortly, we're going to want to thicken the sauce. And so what we do is, that's about 2-3 tablespoons of cornstarch. And hold on, I'm going to mix up some water in there. So the water's added. It's about the same amount of water, 2-3 tablespoons of water. There's my cornstarch there. Just give it all a good mix up and it'll turn into a nice paste, and then we're going to add that over to the mix here once it comes time to thicken things. If you always do your cornstarch this way, you're never going to get clumps. This will completely prevent clumps in your cornstarch. Alright, so that's coming really nicely there. Next thing I'm going to do is add some sauce. So take whatever sauce you really like. So we got this one that we get at Costco, and we use it for pasta mainly. I've been using it a lot for calzones lately. That's way too much for one batch of calzones. You're going to want a good cup or so. Let me see, that's 1.8, well, about 1.2 liters. I usually use about a quarter to a third of it for a batch of calzones. So what's that going to equal? Quick, who's the math geek? You can tell when you can tell how much you need just by spreading it around a bit. You want it slightly on the liquid side, and then when it's slightly on the liquid side, you add your thickener that I have sitting over there. So I need a little bit more than that. That's not quite liquidy enough. So this is going to be, we'll just add that. That's cheater. You can make your sauce from scratch, but that's a whole other video, making sauce from scratch. So that's looking pretty good right now. That's looking pretty good. I might, yeah, we'll do that. And I'll give one last stir over here. You can hear me clinking away. Here, look. One last stir to my cat. You hear my cat? He smells the pork cooking. He's a smart cat, that one. So one last stir. I'm going to pour that in there for thickening. It's all gone. No clumps, promise. And I'll mix that all up, and that's going to be our filling, pretty much like that. Oh wait, it's not quite our filling until I add the ground rosemary. Just love ground rosemary and pretty much everything. So we'll mix that all in there too. So when you're dealing with starch as a thickener, you gotta let it boil for a little bit. It's the physical motion of the boil that brings out the thickening abilities of the starch, actually, the cornstarch, or any other similar thickening agent that you might use. So you just got to let that kind of boil up a bit. Then I'm going to turn this off and let it cool down because I want it to be cooler when I'm filling the calzones. Alright, so there's my dough. First thing I always do is I weigh this out into, I know how much this whole thing weighs, like I said, about 1 kilo 40. That's actually just slightly under a kilo. It doesn't really matter that much. I decided, I did the math, I want about 70 grams per calzone, give or take a gram or two. So I measure those out. I have my bowl here that they were mixed in, and I just put them all in there. So I'm just measuring out 70 grams. That's going to give me 14 relatively small calzones. And I'll just put the little dough balls in here, and then I'll deal with those later. So basically that's all I'm doing at this point. Alright, so there's all the dough balls that I got. You see, I don't put them all in the middle. I put them all around so they're not piled up on each other and sticking to each other, so you can't get them apart. And they'll be fine there until we roll them all out. Okay, I got everything ready and laid out. My dough balls, I've got some feta cheese all crumbled up. I've got some matzo cheese that's grated. I got my filling, and I got a bowl here that I'm going to use. You'll see in a second here. I'm going to start rolling out here on the counter. Remember what I said, if your dough is perfect, you won't need flour, and I really never do. I hope this time is no exception. If you really want, you can have a lot of options out on the table. If you're having a party entertaining or something, you can let people pick and choose their own fillings, their own cheeses, their own extras, roll them out and have a little piece of dough. They can put their initial on it in dough to put on top of it so they know which one is theirs. Alright, so we grab a dough ball. It's not that difficult to roll these suckers out. And even if you can't get them rolled out square, and they're easier to roll if you flip them every time you do a few rolls. Now these are relatively small. They're kind of like the size of maybe pizza pockets that you buy. I don't know how big pizza pockets are in the supermarket. I don't think I've ever actually bought them, but I've seen them on TV, I guess.
Pretty small.
So these are probably about that size. Just flip it a couple times. It's getting pretty thin now, but they puff up well in the oven. Alright, so now what I do is I got that rolled out. So I take my little bowl here. I get like 2 tablespoons of filling, and I decide what else is going in there. This guy is just getting some matzo cheese. Give it a good mix. Give that a good mix like that. That's going to be a little bit too much for that calzone, but the cheese helps hold it all together too. So let's see how much we're going to get on there. And this is somewhat trial and error. You'll get used to it. So about that much. You can see how much I have left in there. Okay, now for this part, if you get any juice in around the part you're going to seal, it's going to be impossible to seal. So that's a big important thing. Get this folded over here the full distance, and then it's pinchy, pinchy, pinchy. Look, pinchy, pinchy, pinchy all along. Pinchy, pinchy, pinchy. You're sealing that sucker up there. Pinchy, pinchy, pinchy. And then flip it over. Pinchy, pinchy on the other side. Pinchy, pinchy, pinchy. And then I do 3 times. One more time on this side. Pinchy, pinchy, pinchy. Seal it all up. Like I said, if you get some moisture in there, it's not going to seal. What I do in those cases, when I put them on the pan, I turn them up this way so that the broken seal is facing up and less stuff leaks out. But normally we're just good like that. Alright, here they are all done. Laid out on parchment paper. If you think the parchment paper looks like it's already been used, it's because it has been. I use it. I do a lot of these things lately, so I use the parchment paper for about 2 days. and then toss it out. These are all the ones with the mozza inside. These are all the ones with the feta cheese inside. You can put anything else in there, you know. Olives is a really good one that a lot of people like to put in there. So now we're going to slam that in the oven. I don't have the convection on right now because it makes too much noise. 350, and we're going to go in there for 20 minutes. And I'll put the convection on now. It's going to start making noise, and they're going to be beautiful. If you want to, you can mop them with some egg white. I should actually do one with egg white just to show you. I don't bother. It's just extra work, and I don't like wasting the yolk. It makes them look pretty. If you got a hot date or something like that, you might want to put the egg white on them. Otherwise, don't worry about it. You're not trying to impress the family. Yeah, and this guy is looking a little different because he blew a hole on the backside when I was stuffing him and pinching him. So the pinchy side is down. This is likely going to blow open here when it bakes, and so I put it that side up so that it'll make less of a mess. There they are out of the oven. I only had one leaker this time. That's pretty good. I normally have more than one leaker. This guy didn't leak on the backside or the front side. Look absolutely gorgeous. They're going to be really, really yummy.